Hey, everybody, and welcome to this evening's show, the Friday the 13th edition of our little show here. And hopefully, everybody's having good luck today. Um, you know, in the environment that we're living right now, it's kind of a madhouse, but hey, life is beautiful. You're up, you get up walking is good. So, uh, thank you for watching and thank you for joining me this evening on the show. But before we start talking about tonight's guest, do me a favor. If you're watching the broadcast live, go ahead and drop in the comments hashtag Team Live so we know that you're watching it live. And if you watch it later in the replay after the broadcast is over, go ahead and drop in the comments hashtag Team Replay. And we would greatly appreciate it. You can also follow us on Twitter at it is at Gabe's My Word Vomit, and then you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm doing a live stream right now on Instagram. It is at the Gabriel. At the _Gabriel _Leal. And that's where I do my live stream just from Twitter. And that's kind of like, Instagram. That's kind of like my behind the scenes sort of thing. So if you see it, you get to see a lot of things that you might not see afterward. During the broadcast. So we do a lot of the pre-conversation and post after there. And then you can also follow us on Facebook. You can follow me, Gabriel Leal, or you can go to the broadcast page at Made from Scratch on there. And you can also follow us on our YouTube live channel. So if you're watching on YouTube or you go watch it afterwards, do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button or drop a comments down below. We would greatly appreciate it as we're trying to build our audience on YouTube. So again, thank you for jumping on there. And you can also catch up with past episodes that we've done. And if you're unable to watch it, we also have it available on podcast form. Okay, you can find us. We upload our shows onto a podcast form, and you can catch those on Anchor, or you can go to Spotify. We're on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. And I believe we've added a seventh streaming option, and then also pretty soon here on Apple Podcast as well. So appreciate you guys for hopping on and being here and just following along. I do love doing this now. It's pretty awesome that I get to see everybody, the group of regulars that come on here and participate. So again, it's pretty cool. So about tonight's guest, she is an interesting person. She was born and raised she's born in Germany. She was raised in Louisiana. Okay. She is a visual artist, and she's also done, she did most of her years at McNeese State, and actually studied at the Goethe Institute of Art History in Rome and then in Florence, Italy. Wow, she's been a lot. So, and I think she currently resides in Houston. She's actually she's pursued her MFA in drawing and painting at the University of Houston. So she is very well versed, and a little disclosure, she is family. So again, I don't know how or why or why I have so many incredible people that are creatives in my family. So without further ado, guys, let me introduce you to Rebea Ballin. Hey there.
Hi.
How are you doing, Rebea? Can you hear me? Thank you for
I'm doing
joining me.
wonderful.
That's right. Again, it's awesome to have family that are creative folks that have that creative soul that I'm always talking about. And she's one of those people, and she's really, really creative. So let me start off by asking you, Rebea, tell me a little bit more about what an actual contemporary visual artist does. What does that entail?
Well, visual artist, first of all, contemporary means that I'm alive. I'm still living, and
I know.
and,
I'm sorry, it's one
and
of those fancy words, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. A lot of people ask, what does contemporary mean? Other categories. But visual artist just puts me in a category that separates me from the artists that are musicians or the artists that are performers, which or artists that are writers. So it kind of just narrows my lane a little bit to visual arts, which I'm an interdisciplinary visual artist. So that's even more language. But basically, photography installations, but it's definitely categories under. Hey,
Oh,
Priscilla.
okay. So it's yeah. So yeah, that's another cool thing, right? People hop on, they can actually comment, and you can pull up the comments that everybody drops in the comments page, which is pretty awesome. You can also interact with your guests and so this is a pretty interesting little tool that we talked about before. So you know, let me ask you, when did you first realize that you wanted to pursue a career in the arts?
Well, I very, very, but I don't know if you know this about me. I started off in music. I played the violin. This is probably my peak grade. I played the violino and I also went on to play the saxophone, not very well. So
Oh,
instrument was a
wow.
violin. But I so around junior high school, I realized that I had stage fright and that I in front of an audience. And that was sort of the moment that I reflected on like I have this need to be it's in performance. I was just like frozen on stage. From the same time that I started taking art classes in junior high school. And so as soon as I
Yeah.
started, I knew exactly that that would be my lane.
Yeah. And it's funny that we start out something like that, because I too, that's where I found my creative side. Was I started playing, of all things, the French horn, and same sort of deal. I wasn't very good at it. I could read musical notes, and I really loved music. I just couldn't play. And then, again, getting up there and doing our first band thing, I was like, I don't know. I can't. I couldn't do it then. So I was kind of like you, but I always still had that
Yeah,
creative aspect to me. So that's I like to call people creative souls, because we all have a need for passion and self expression. So how would you define your creativity?
that's how would I define it?
Yeah.
It's very much not something that it's just me, if that makes any sense. I know because I often
Yeah.
ask myself like, why do I do this? I'm not, there's years where I don't sell artwork. I can't really make a living off of my art. I don't have representation. So there's so many questions. I'm like, why am but the thought of not doing it doesn't make any sense to me. I have to do it. It's exactly who I am. And I want your first question because you asked like when did I know I wanted to have a career in the arts? That's a little bit different because having a career in
Yeah.
the arts, you go and punch a time clock in 8 hours and you punch out and you get paid. So out in the arts being very that's around the time that we met when I moved to Dallas because I went to graphic designer up after a couple of years just going back to college. And while I was there, still pursuing a degree in graphic design because I thought, oh, that's I give and earn a living. But that was very difficult. And I was attending a lecture by that an artist was giving at the time. His name is Michael Ray Charles. You probably know him, even though
Hmm.
you may not recognize his name, but he did all of the Well, he worked for Spike Lee and did the illustrations for the Bamboozled film, but
Mm.
he also at a university where I went, and so this is in 1996, and I was sitting in the audience, him talk. He also graphic design, but when he showed his images of the work that he was making, it was very offensive, not to me personally, but to the audience. It was very provocative. It was very uncomfortable for much of the white audience. And
Yeah.
our audience going, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that being a visual artist, you could have such an impact, you could have such a voice. And that's the moment where I was like, yeah, I have to get out of the idea of working for someone else being creative. I focus onto the making work that as having a voice. And that happened while I was already in
Yeah.
college. That's when that decision to have that career happened. And it's been like a slow rolling ball ever since.
And that's funny that you mentioned that, because again, I don't think we plan our journeys out like that. They happen just to find us, and it's one little thing like that, a lecture or a chance meeting
Yeah.
with somebody. Um, Gosh, a movie that you see, a song that you hear, that can change the direction. Even a book that you read, it can change the direction of the way you're heading in life. Because again, you can plan as well as you want. You can say, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to do this. And then as long as you go and you start going down that path, and the universe has a funny way of saying, no, we're going to shift you this way. You're going to head over there. So
Yeah,
again,
that's
this
why
is kind of like what I did. I didn't plan on.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, as long as the goal is there, being open to the journey and how to get there is very important. Like, you can create like these stepping stones, these smaller goals to get to the end result, but you have to be very fluid, decision making, I would say. But one thing I talk a lot about in my practice is permission. And when we watch triggers something, or we read a book, or we have a conversation with someone that might say something like podcast, and then we're like, you know what? That's exactly what I want to do. It's sort of like sometimes we have to have permission, whether it's from that's okay. Like, I'm here to granting. Do it. You can do it. You're allowed to call yourself an artist. You're allowed to make something creative, and you don't have to have and then you don't have to have a lot of money. You are allowed to just do it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, I had to get in the habit of doing, because I would always call myself, well, I'm an aspiring writer. And I started talking to people when I first started going out on this journey of reaching out to talk to people, to talk to folks, and I said, you're not an aspiring writer, my friend. You are a writer. You need to change the way that you present yourself, because I mean, if you sit down and you're writing a book, and even though it's not published yet, but you've got a written book done, I mean, you're a writer. Even if you're writing a blog, you're a writer. So I feel that whenever you say, just give yourself permission to do that. And that was one of the hardest things for me whenever I was trying to do that, when I started setting out here to try to go talk to different folks, different people, and just to see what was out there. And again, I'm starting to find a path that's starting to formulate in front of me, and I never expected it. So it's good to hear you say that. It really resonates with the way I feel. So let me ask you another question, since we're going about that. And whenever you do whenever you start a creative project, what is the creative process that you go through from, I mean, beginning idea all the way up until you have an actual exhibit, or you have a finished piece of artwork? How do you go through that process whenever you start? Because each creative person has their own method.
Um, well, there's sort of two ways to answer that. So I'm gonna give you, do you want to know that answer from the perspective to get to an exhibition, or do you want to know that answer from the perspective of the curator who organizes an exhibition?
Well, why don't we start with the first? Because I think being the maker, from actually starting from idea until you actually have a finished, or a finished piece of work. So let's start with that perspective first, because those are both interesting points.
Well, for me, the most important phase is research and development phase, which is sounds very fancy, but it often looks like me laying on the couch flip until I get an idea. And that is
Okay.
just very realistic. The hardest part of making work is conceptual. Wow. Because if I wanted to, I could, because my strength is in draftsmanship. Not
Yeah.
every subject matter needs a drawing. If I every day, I could put an
Yeah.
object and observe to draw, but of that, at some point. And so for me, I have to have it goes back to what is a lot of my work is
Yeah.
not overtly political, but it has a sort of social, political tone to it. And I might think of a
Yeah.
cause or like I do a lot of research, and when I like to unearth hidden histories. And so when I find a
Yeah.
subject that I'm like, oh, why haven't I ever heard of the history of Plassage, for example, or Circassian Women, which are two projects that I've done, then I'll just start researching. And then there's usually a looming
Yeah.
deadline. And that's when you're like, okay, I've done the research. Now you go into production. So that's sort of like the second phase is production. And then fortunately, the exhibition, because I do show often enough,
Yeah.
I usually have a reason. If that makes like I might have a show
Yeah.
coming up. It might be next year, and then I know how to pace myself, or I might have something pop up in the more immediate future where I know I have to pace myself. Aside from that, though, just having a good practice, and this is the advice I give to any up and coming artist, is just make the work.
Yeah.
Just make the
Okay.
work. And so sometimes it's
Yeah.
methodical, and sometimes it's not.
Okay. Yeah. And that's another thing. So whenever you when you whenever you do a I guess whenever you start that, where do you like you say you're doing the research, right? So you've done the research now, and you're starting in the creative process. I mean, do you have like an outlined kind of idea where you want to go with it, or you just say, okay, I've done, I know what I want, I know what I know about it, but let me just start, drawing, or let me start creating, the photographs, or how does that process go through, though, from, I mean, again, from beginning your idea to outline? Because like in writing, it's kind of hard to just sit down and say, I'm going to write. So most writers will set out an outline, right? That way you have some kind of template or formula to kind of follow along your little story arc from beginning to end. And it might change in between there. So is it the same kind of process whenever you're doing, artwork like that?
A lot of it kind of develops very organically if I'm what because I know what I draw very well, and that's
Mm.
there. Like you can look at what I've
Yeah.
done in the past, and if it's a drawing, the subject matter is hair because I love being very but for example, when I was curated into a show whose theme surrounded violence towards women. Well, then I know it's sense in that, as far as that is concerned, I already know this is not going to be a drawing. This is an opportunity for me to do something, an object. And I wish I had like just like a firm answer for you, but I'm just very open to
Yeah.
the feeling itself. I usually make my in the between times when I maybe don't have
Yeah.
that solid idea because it's long. And so I can be in the studio. And when I say studio, most of the time I'm working from home. Even when I'm here in
Yeah.
Louisiana visiting my mom, I might tape up a drawing in her like cuting, and then over time that drawing gets used for something different. But I'm a printmaker as well. I usually do printing in the summer, and so by the time summer comes around, I have an idea of like what the images are going to look like. It might be text, like silk screening. Yeah, so it's kind of a hard question to answer, but I dabble so much. I usually when something doesn't need to be a drawing, and that narrows it down a lot for me.
Yeah. So again, that's what's interesting about being a creative person, because not every type of artist approaches it like that. So again, in I know writers kind of like you who can sit down at a desk and just have an idea and don't have an outline and just start formulating their story, and it develops as they go along, because each person is different. So um musicians, they can pick up a guitar, start playing notes, right? And they can formulate the song before there's even lyrics done. And it's kind of
Right.
interesting whenever you talk to somebody about, hey, how is your process about doing this? Because again, I've had on now at least 10 different people, and each of them have a different way of approaching how they create their work. So it's kind of interesting when you say that, because you're I guess you could say you're more free form. You're more, I don't God, what would be the word for it? And my mind's freezing up right now. But again,
I mean, it's like,
you do have a general. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think I know what you mean. It's kind of like you're freestyling, but with a focus, because not everything works, and
That's
also you also sit with your work.
you know
I don't assume that be a great work of art. There's a lot of failures in between what I've thought, what I've made, and what is hanging in a museum or in a gallery exhibition. Like that's not the only thing I've made. And so there's a lot of filtering out things, ideas that maybe you thought were a good idea. And then when you made it, you were like, yeah, and that's why community is important, because you have conversations with other artists. You have other artists that you I forth. You have curatorial visits where you get a lot of insight about yourself. Will think about. You have to process that within reason, because you can't let any critique define or change you. But it is important to put yourself out there to welcome, because people aren't just always going to be honest with you. And so it's kind of scary making a body of work and putting it out there, because you never know if the audience is going to welcome that. And a lot about
Yeah.
music is still a huge passion. I'm around musicians all the time, and they get just as nervous when they release an album, and or especially on, it's such a platform to get feedback. And it's like
Yeah.
putting, revealing a page in your diary.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's interesting. Interesting you say that. I have a friend. She's a romance novelist, and I mean, I admire her work, and she's built a lot of followers in her genre. but every time that she releases a book, she's always so nervous. And you know, I know, and I'll tell her, you know, you're a really great writer, even if you bomb, right? Even if it stinks, even if it's whatever, uh, you know, it's something. It's part of you that's going out there. And I say, everybody, that's you bleeding your soul onto paper or whatever your art form is, right? Because, like you said, it's like a page of your diary. So, you know, once you put it out there, that's you into the world. And it's you know, I'm glad you said freestyle, because that was the word I couldn't think of the word, but that's exactly what I was talking about. So you know, you get it. Again, you have the what I call the creative soul. Everybody has a little aspect to it. Some of us are just more keen to sharing it than everybody else, because again, like you said, it takes a lot to put your work out into the world.
Yeah, and I actually think
And
every human is born with the instinct to want to be creative. You have children, you know what how they are in their hand when they get crayons in their hand or mark. You know, a lot of times I'll pose the question to my students who are not art majors, and it's a art class for any
yeah,
degree program. And so my audience is made up of like who really, really want to be there, and or they think art is boring. And I
yeah,
ask them like, "Ray,
yeah,
you love to draw." One go up, and then I'm like, "Okay, now raise your hand
yeah,
if you love to draw when you were a kid." And then every hand goes up. I'm like, "Yeah, because we were innately
uh,
born with this desire to be creative." Now, we have different aspirations and different tastes, or sometimes we are not fed the support that we need as children continue to be creative. We're stifled because art is not the field of study, if you will, you know, in a school. Like there's hardly any art classes, and who's what to grow up and make money. Like it's kind
yeah,
of like there's winners. We want, you know,
yeah,
sustain a way of living. And if I can only imagine to a parent having a child that wants to be a scary nightmare. they're, they're
yeah,
right to think that to some degree, but your child is going to be a happy, fulfilled kid if they are
yeah,
allowed to pursue that as a passion.
yeah. And that's great because again, um, for example, I have a friend. His name's Frank. He's a regular on the show. Let me just give him a hello. He saw that in his two kids. His two kids are musicians, right? He saw that in his daughter whenever she was started picking up the guitar at the age of 13 and started playing, and she became a songwriter. Now she's actually going to Berkeley College in Boston to pursue her career in music, and she's very
Wow.
talented. Now his son, who's only yeah, his son's only 15, and he's starting his own musical career. And he's the kind of father that say, you know what, I see that talent in him, and he goes, you know what, I'm not going to push them, but I'm going to support them as much as I can. So
Support.
he's been very involved in their careers, and I'm actually planning to have both of them on my show at some point because uh, they're both interesting young artists because they both have. It's funny they grew up around that musical talent, and their styles are so different, you know. So she's like a singer songwriter. She takes it to a different level, and not that he might not get there to that point, but he's got a voice. His voice is like I don't want to compare it to, but he sounds like Justin Bieber. If that's um, so, you know, might not be saying a lot. Not that might not be everybody's cup of tea, but he's you
Hey,
know he's made a
I
career.
love the bees. Very young men. So
Yeah, yeah. So he's got a really good voice, and uh, you know, again, he just did an interview last week in L.A. on a live TV show, or this week actually, I think it was. He's out in L.A. with his mother, and he's out there doing promos and that kind of thing. So, I had this conversation with their dad, and he was sitting there telling me about all the music industry and the stuff that he's had to learn. I said, man, you're just as interesting as they are. So I plan to have them all on because, again, to find somebody, like you said, which go back to our conversation, right? Somebody might see their kid and go, oh my God, he just wants to be this. And then you have the parent who goes, I see that and I see their gift. Let me harness it. Let me, help them. Let me help them develop it and grow into who they're meant to be. And that's when I see that kind of thing. I think that's beautiful to me because I'm a father as well, and I want to do the same thing. If I see that passion inside my children, again, hey, if you want to do art, go for it. I mean, again, if all else fails, right, there's what you can always go back to being you go get a job. You can go get a job anywhere.
That's
My
right.
thing is if you're gonna go pursue that though, and that's what's gonna make you happy, and that's going to make you feel fulfilled at the end of the day, then I'm for it. Albeit, again, I'm learning that myself because I came up from a different aspect, and I'm pretty sure you've learned along your way as well that it's not always easy getting that kind of support all the time whenever you're like struggling when you first start, right? Because you're like, you need to get a job, you need to go do this. Art's not going to be the way for you, right? I've heard that a few times from other people. Writing's not going to be your way.
Yeah, and then there's,
Um,
there's talk. You could talk about other people that don't support it, but there's negative self-talk, fear, insecurity. I don't know enough to be an artist, or anybody. How do I get out? All of that's will make you doubt yourself in that way.
all right. Well, real quick, what I like to do, my mentor kind of showed me this, so I'm gonna acknowledge a few people that are usually join me on the show who follow me all the time. Leo's here. Leo Calderon, thank you, sir. Oh wow, Russell Rowland. Russell Rowland is an interesting guy. He's a writer as well. He's written quite a few books, quite a few books that he's written, and me and him have had conversations about him actually being my editor because he also does that as well. So I'm glad that he's following me because I do have to get in touch with him. I got to get my book published, and I need an editor. And we had preliminary conversations, but again, things like financial constraints have held me back a little bit. But I'm ready to do it now, so I need to get in touch with him. I'll holler at you, Russell. Thank you for hopping on the show. And then let me give you one more question right before I end everything, and that is, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind whenever your time is said and done here?
Thank you for all your questions. That's a grand. Actually, if I do acknowledging writers, if writers aren't around, I have no
Yeah.
legacy. And what writers do, because I've been, and I'm on Twitter, I follow more writers than I do visual artists, because visual artists, we're like-minded, but writers,
Yeah.
job is exceptional. We edit the same, similarly to like visual artists who have to edit. We have to edit out unnecessary things all the time, and a good writer knows how to edit very well. And so I've just grown to really respect what writers do. So let me just say that. And it's important for writers to write about artists. And there is a void and a disconnect when it comes to that in my community. in
Yeah.
Houston. It's not very easy to write about. It requires a different language, and I understand. So writers out there that would love to write about art, you are welcome. There's room for you. As far as leaving a legacy, I think it's important to anything that you make has a potential of being unearthed in the future. Because as an art historian, the dog's barking.
Yeah, they're driving me
And
nuts.
we look at we look at artifacts to learn about the past. So everything that I make now, I take it with high regard. Feel like future people are going to
Yeah.
look at to see what was really on the minds of the people, not media. Yes, not what's, we're going to look at artifacts to kind of connect those dots. So I think it's very important. Like what that's look at legacy. You know, it's not fame, it's not any of that other stuff, but it's like making good work that might reveal what being alive during this time was like.
Yeah, and that's pretty, that's the same way that I feel in terms of leaving behind. Because again, as a writer, you never know how important your work's gonna be once you're gone. Because you see guys like F. Scott Fitzgerald. He never thought like The Great Gatsby was gonna be something that would be handed out in schools and taught and that sort of thing. So he wrote that as just him being him. Nobody says like Ernest Hemingway, Old Man in the Sea. Never thought that would be the book, but that it becomes, and it's so revered, and it's studied, and they write cliff notes about these books and that sort of thing. So those guys, I'm pretty sure, were the same way. That I didn't plan on that legacy being what it was, but again, it's there because you wrote it, you put it out there. So again, that's what I want to do as well, is leave that legacy. So if I write these books, they might not, mean as much right now, but who knows, in 100 years, they might find my book and say, hey, we were studying
It's an
this book because
artifact.
look at how he wrote this. Yeah. So exactly. That's exactly what it is. And that's a good way to put it. I'm glad you said it. I need to write that down because that's a good way to describe it, as an artifact. That's interesting. Again, but that's why you have these conversations, and you have creative people around. And so I want to give you a big thank you. I want to express a lot of gratitude for you coming on, because again, to take the time out and do something like this, man, it is experience for me, learning how to do this, how to reach out and create and interview people, because this is part of my creative expression as well, is doing this and creating this forum to share with people, to share with artists. Again, that's why I try to find these type of people, and that reminds me to lock up my dogs as well. So this is something that you will not see unless you have live TV. I mean, live video stream. So it is kind of crazy, but thank you for coming on, Rebea. I do appreciate it.
Anytime.
And just so everybody knows, if you want to catch the replay about this, I will be posting it up on YouTube. You can go back there and see past episodes as well. And hopefully by tomorrow, I have all this uploaded into a podcast form. If you want to go catch it on the podcast and listen to it there. I appreciate you guys hopping on a Friday the 13th of all things, right? And I didn't even get into the hot topic that's been affecting so many people, which is the coronavirus, because it's affecting a lot of artists, writers, musicians as well. We kind of had that little conversation ahead, in our little pre-meeting there. But I think that's like you were talking about earlier. You just can't punch a clock 8 hours and be an artist. An artist is a 24-hour job, 24-hour thing. You don't stop. You don't stop being that artist, right? So that's why, I carry pen and paper everywhere with me, because I never know when an idea or inspiration is going to come, and I have to just jot it down. So Thank you again. And for everybody watching, thank you. I appreciate you hopping on. Again, you can check out Rebea's work. You can also check her out, some of her pieces on her website. It's at www.rebea-ballin.com. She's got a lot of her work on there. And, she is very active on Instagram as well. So if you would like to follow her there on Instagram, you can check her out there as well, right? And she is at Miss Ballin on Instagram. So you can follow her there, check her out, right? And again, thank you for hopping on with me.
It's at R Ballin.
Oh, R Ballin. Okay. That's where it shows up. That's why it says it on there. Okay. Yeah, it does. That's your Twitter, isn't it? Is it Twitter then? It's
yes. Miss Ballin.
It's Twitter that you have it.
It's pronounced Miss Ballin.
Yeah, Miss Ballin.
Yeah.
Miss Ballin. I say it like it's supposed to be said. Like
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. But again, thank you for hopping on, and everybody.
Right. Thank you.
I'll catch you Monday. Sunday, I'll kind of recap of the guests that were coming on for the following week, and we'll catch you again Monday evening at 7:00. Everybody, y'all have a great weekend. Try to go shopping if you can, because the stores are madness right now. So I'm speaking from experience. So, yeah.
Regular soap works too. Yeah. Just throw it out there.
Exactly. All right, guys. Y'all have a good evening. Again, we'll see you Monday evening, 7:00. Thank you for hopping on. All the gratitude in the world, and y'all have a good night.